Shalom, shalom. Call Haloyam La Yahweh Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak Kodash. Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Barakatah Rachak Kodash, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Rachak Kodash. Shalom, double honors to the elder apostles of Great Millstone. Shalom to the elder bishops and the elders in the Akim and the Akwath of the hopeful elect. Shalom. Just want to go into a quick video entitled Never Raise Your Son Like Quinton Rampage Jackson. Now, who is Quinton Rampage Jackson? He's a former MMA fighter, and he's actually was my favorite MMA fighter, that I've seen over the years. And so the way he fought, was real entertaining to watch. And so, it's like a powerhouse, in the MMA light heavyweight division. And so, he had a son. He trained him up, but he trained him up the wrong way. Just seeing that, his relationship with his son, who you've seen in the clip, his name is Raja Jackson, right? And so it was a very unfortunate incident where the guy went off on this Edomite, for hitting him over the head with a beer can earlier that day. And so he lost it and blacked out, and he didn't have proper tutelage from his dad, right? Because his son, as Rampage, he raised his son like his best friend. You can go and look at videos on YouTube and TikTok, seeing how Rampage talks to us, how he deals with him, talk to him like he's his college frat buddy, like it's his college frat brother. It's a very inappropriate relationship in the way he talks to him as well, like he is buddy with a foul mouth, cursing like a sailor all the time and stuff, and acting like they're besties, So, and this is the end result, when you have a son that you didn't properly spiritually train, and not even, and most people don't know how to spiritually train their child in the laws, because nobody keeps the laws except for the hopeful elect, right? To the best of their ability. But you're supposed to have a barrier of authority over your children and raise them up a certain particular way, and teach them how to maneuver and how to behave themselves, and how to deal wisely amongst men. And so he has a son that's a loose cannon out there. He had a lot of pent up aggression, and he lost it, and he went psycho on that guy for a moment, and probably ruined his career. So we'll go ahead and grab some precepts. We'll start in the book of Proverbs, chapter 22 and verse 6. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. And so this serves as a cautionary tale of how not to raise your child. I think it's a movie. It's like a cartoon movie. I think it's called How to Train a Dragon. It should be a movie on where it should be lessons on how to train your children. Because if not, they're going to behave like the dragon, the serpent, the Edomites, the so-called white race, living like a Babylonian, right? Anything goes. A savage upbringing, and then the end result, you'll do something savage like that if you can't control your spirit and you control your anger. So we'll go to Proverbs 13 and verse 24. He that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. So, so what this is going into, you want to make sure that you're properly disciplining and correcting and spanking your child, giving them whoopings, making sure that you keep him humble and let him know of his wrongdoing. Because that's how the Heavenly Father chastens us when we go off. So we supposed to, in our realm and on our level, in this realm, chasten our children that He blesses us with, right? To make sure that we break that pride up for them and let them know the error of their ways, so that they can stay being straights when they go out, and keep their nose clean, right? Keep their head down and go about their day respectfully and humbly in the name of Yahweh Shah. So we'll get let's see, read this in the AMP version, AMP version right here. It says, "He who withholds the rod of discipline hates his son, but he who loves him disciplines and trains him diligently and appropriately with wisdom and love." So, it's not hate to discipline your child, but this retarded, this stupid remedial society shames men, especially brothers, so-called black men, the tribe of Judah, and all the tribes. When they try to chasten their children, they shame them and make them an offender for doing what the Holy Scriptures say. It's a necessary thing to do, because why? The child will grow up and he'll be off without any proper understanding, right? Offending people like right there we just saw. That's an Edomite that he assaulted, but that was assault. There's a thing called the receipt in wrestling. It's called the receipt, where if someone hits you, then hit you in disrespect or hit you too hard or something, then it's called the receipt, where you return it and get your justice for that during the course of a in-ring situation like that. But he went way too far, right? That was like a mauling, right? Could have killed him if he would. He looked like he was going to keep going. So he snapped. He wasn't reeled in by his dad, because his father actually called him on the phone doing a live stream, and it was on video. It's a lot of video footage out there. I didn't want to, I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but the way he made fun of it. Rampage, his dad, called him and made fun of it, and then that added fuel to that anger, and then he really went off and snapped on that guy in the ring. So that's bad horrible parenting. So now let's see. We'll go to and then also you chasten your child, you correct them, you spank them when need be. Spank them, and then when you let them know. Teach them and let them know, and properly edify and educate them on why they were whooped, right? So that makes them better and makes them improve their understanding. Okay, so from there we'll go to the book of Sirach, chapter or Ecclesiasticus, chapter 30, start at verse 1. "He that loveth his son causeth him oft to feel the rod." That goes into often spanking him, that he may have joy of him in the end. So, and there's a video showing his dad, Quinton Rampage Jackson, looking at the video footage of that guy, when he attacked him, right? And he looked away in great displeasure, because he didn't have he's not having joy of his son at the end. He's having great displeasure of his son now with that assault, because he could go to jail. They're looking at possibly taking legal action. The cops, the authorities, so-called authorities, might take over, and he could be done, and your son's life is ruined because you didn't properly raise him, right? So he failed in that regard. Your child is not your buddy. You don't raise your child to be your buddy. You raise your child to be a respectful, humble, and obedient child, and be respectful and humble out there in the streets. And there's times where you may have to defend yourself, but you try to be at peace with all men to the best of your ability, and use wisdom at all times. Verse 2. He that chastiseth his son shall have joy in him, and shall rejoice of him among his acquaintance. So your child bring you much joy and bring you deep pride in a good way, wicked pride, and there's being proud of the spiritually, of the accomplishment of the proper upbringing of your child, and he'll bring you joy amongst your acquaintances or your friends, right? When they see how well instructed and how well ordered and respectable, the child is when he grows up. Verse 3, he that teacheth his son grieveth the enemy. Our enemy is a so-called white man, right? That's why he created, as soon as he did he concocted this plan of the integration, integrate us into his society, into his, amongst him, and then installed the cancer of feminism, and also the rainbow movement, all of these different movements after that as well. So the main one was the integration, which immediately shortly got followed up by feminism, which spoiled our women, right? Poured venom in their spirit, to the serpent venom, to make them go off. And then after that, what happened? It destroyed the households. And then now you have the woman raising these men, and that's why they have a thing called YNs, aka young ninjas or young niggas. All these young men nowadays, just like that young man there, raised without their dad. And then, well, he had his dad, but his dad didn't raise him properly, right? That shows you can have your father in your life, but still go off because you're not raised properly, you're not raised spiritually, and you're liable to go off and do something like that. But the woman raising these boys, and so they basically are grown men. These are men, and these are women, mentally and spiritually women in men's bodies, and they can cause a lot of damage, right? So when you have they split the household, and then now the men isn't properly raising their children, their sons, and when you raise a son, right, the so-called white man, he hates that. He hates to see two things: brothers in unity. Well, three things: brothers in unity, brothers and sisters. So-called black man, so-called black woman. In union, having a healthy marriage. He hates that, and then he also hates to see a man, a brother, an Israelite man, raise his son the right way. He hates all of those things. He hates us to have unity. That's why he sows discord amongst us, to keep us destroyed, because us being destroyed is his strength and his rulership. So that's why if Israelite man teaches son, it grieves the enemy. The enemy are the heathen, because they can't thrive unless we are destroyed. And before his friends, he shall rejoice of him. You see? So it's twofold. Your friends of your nation, they're going to rejoice, well, the father rejoices amongst his friends over his children, that, when they see how well instructed they are. And then on the flip side, on the left side, the so-called white man, he's grieving when he see that we're properly raising our children. Verse 4, though his father die, yet he is though he were not dead. For he hath left one behind him that is like himself. So, the sons become like their fathers, and the daughters become like their mothers. While he lived, he saw and rejoiced in him. And when he died, he was not sorrowful, because he knew as he was passing away, he knew that his son was left. He knew his son was going to be okay, because he was built up the right way, and he's going to be fine when he after he passes away. Verse 6, he left behind him an avenger against his enemies, and one that shall requite kindness to his friends. So when you properly raise your child, a father to his son, he's going to be just like him, because you're going to raise him in the ways of the Heavenly Father, a righteous man. And he's going to properly, nothing's going to change towards his enemies. As a man, enemies may come and try to spoil a man's bloodline and household, if he wasn't taught right. But he can't, because he's like an avenger there, to treat them the same exact way. And then Also, that son that was taught right is going to be kind unto who? To his father's friends. He's going to properly handle the affairs that his dad, and that was in his dad's life. You know, his friends and enemies, he's going to treat them the exact same way. So now, verse 7. He that maketh too much of his son shall bind up his wounds, and his bowels will be troubled at every cry. Because you're making too much, you know, you're not properly raising them and not properly guiding them, you know, not handling the situation, not handling your children the right way. You know, they're going to go out and make all kind of mistakes. And you're going to be binding up their wounds, meaning what? They're going to be out there making all kind of mistakes, and you know, you put you at an inconvenience, you know, financially and mentally and spiritually, and in multiple ways. Verse 8. And horse not broken becometh headstrong, and a child left to himself will be willful. So that means what? You know, that's why the so-called white man, he's worked all of his witchcraft to get the woman to you know, hate her man, and the man hate his woman. That's a part of the curses in Deuteronomy 28. And so, and that divides the house, you know, and a woman leaving and committing adultery, being a whore out there, right? She's for the streets, as the phrase go, one of the phrases, you know. And so when she go out and do these things, you know, the house gets split and divided. And now that child is being raised in a single parent household, and usually the black woman has that child, and then sure destruction of that child is going to come because the woman is not properly raising them. Just look at society today. Look at the young black, so-called black men today. That's the product of, quote unquote, what I call is that's the product of black girl magic, right? They love to try to praise a woman at every turn to keep her head lifted up in pride, like she's something special when she's nothing. We're all nothing, right? But the so-called white man love to praise a black woman because he knows praising her is going to keep her destroyed and proud, and keeping and she's the nuclear weapon that he created to nuke our households and our children. So those children become willful, and then they become very emotional being raised by those women because the man isn't around to keep that child to humble them, right? So verse 9. Conquer thy child, and he shall make thee afraid. Play with him, and he will bring thee to heaviness. So you don't play with your children, you know. It's okay to be gentle and kind with them at times, but it's a boundary that you have to keep in place at all times, because a child, it'll blur the lines, and then the child will be inappropriate towards you. Verse 10. Laugh not with him, lest thou have sorrow with him. And that's what that Quinton Rampage guy, that's all he did, was always laughing, joking, and cursing at him, you know, talking to him, you know, the Babylonian, you know, dialogue, how they curse like a sailor, right? And that's all good. It's all cute, fun, and games, you know. And people comment on the videos of how how Quinton Rampage have a great relationship with his son, and that's the best relationship that they've ever seen. No, you don't. A father is not supposed to talk to his son like his best friend, or you know, his road dog. You know, like a guy he's real close to, and you have a comfortable relationship. You know, when you have a best friend or you're real close to someone, you give each other a hard time in a joking way. You know, mess with each other at times. That's not the same. That's not how you're supposed to behave with your child. And so Rampage, you know, he's wrapped up in this world. You know, he's a very crazy, loose individual himself. So that's why, you know, it's not a surprise to see that he's raised his son this way. So verse 10. Laugh not with him, lest thou have sorrow with him, and lest thou gnash thy teeth in the end. And he's about to gnash his teeth now after seeing that footage of him assaulting that man in the ring, and now it's going to possibly give him jail time, and for sure has ruined his business opportunities that he was working towards doing now. Let's see, verse 11. Give him no liberty in his youth, and wink not at his follies. And that's all Rampage did. Wink all day, giving him all kind of liberty and winking at whatever he did and making fun of it and joking with him like he's, at a college frat party or something. It was just everything was party with him and having fun and joking around like that's his buddy. And he failed miserably with that. Verse 12. Bow down his neck while he is young, and beat him on the sides while he is a child, lest he wax stubborn, and be disobedient unto thee, and so bring sorrow to thine heart. So you have to, because these children, they get lifted up in pride, and you have to stay on them and make sure you continue to keep them humble, bow his neck by, making them be in servitude and being in submissiveness and obedient unto your word. And if not, then you gotta go ahead and tear them up, and give them that spanking and make sure that, you break that pride off of them. If not, then you're gonna grow up and you won't be able to tell them anything, and make you very sorrowful all your days until you're gone. So, that's Rampage. He messed up mightily in raising his son that way. First Maccabees 2 and verse 17. Then answered the king's officers and said to Mattathias on this wise, Thou art a ruler and an honorable and great man in this city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. You see, because like the Lord said, Yahweh said, about Reuben, when Jacob was passing away, said Reuben, Jacob said this, in the spirit, Reuben, the beginning of my strength. Why? Because that was his first son, his firstborn. It was his son, and so sons is a man's strength. And so this is the story of the Maccabees when during the Greek Empire, the third beast, and the leader at that time in Israel that was highly respected. He was the Edomite delegates. He sent officers of the king went to Jerusalem to try to persuade him to sell out, because he had great influence and he was strengthened with his sons and his brothers. But the only time you're strengthened by your sons is when you raise them up the proper way, not raising them the way Quinton Rampage raised his son like he's his buddy, right? So that's why you got to raise your children up the right way, and then that way, that's your strength. That's like an avenger for you, and they got your back in all things, spiritually, not to go and be a bully or anything like that. So go on down to verse 49. Now when the time drew near that Mattathias should die, he said unto his sons, Now hath pride and rebuke gotten strength, and the time of destruction, and the wrath of indignation. Verse 50. Now therefore, my sons, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. So, be ye zealous for the law, and give your lives for the covenant of your fathers. That's the way you're supposed to raise your children, and being a strong warrior and raising up your children, telling them how they need to live their life, not just being immersed in folly, laughing and giggling and making jokes and, getting involved in all manner of stupidity in Babylon the Great, in a very loose society. So let's see. Verse 51. Call to remembrance the acts of our father. Call to remembrance what acts our fathers did in their time. So shall you receive great honor and an everlasting name. So that this is the proper way to go in raising up your sons. And that's what Mattathias, before he was about to die, went ahead and ordered his house, told his sons, on how they need to go ahead and maneuver and always move this way, the way that they always been moving, even after he dies, so that they'll have an everlasting name and have great honor. So now his son, Rampage Jackson's son, has now brought dishonor to their name. Verse 64. Wherefore, ye my sons, be valiant and show yourselves men in the behalf of the law. That's real men. When you occupied in the prophecies of the Heavenly Father and rehearsing the righteous acts of the commandments and having a faith first and foremost, right? And that's the true men of the Lord. That's the true men of Israel. Anything else is folly and is under Satan. And show yourselves men in the behalf of the law, for by it shall ye obtain glory. So that's the only way to have an everlasting name and great honor and obtain glory from the Heavenly Father Yahweh in the name of Yahweh Shah. And not raising your son like a buddy. You teach him up. This is the way you teach him right here. It's very serious business. And, righteousness is serious. Real men is after the laws of the Most High, is after the Most High's heart, like David, in the name of Yahweh Shah. Following down that straight and narrow path of Yahweh Shah, that 130 elect house of David. So, never raise your child like Quinton Rampage Jackson, only in the holy scriptures of the Heavenly Father and the laws, statutes, and commandments. So with that being said, hope the video was edifying. The water to the Hakwadash for another video. This is the next video I say. Shalom.